Hi everyone, welcome to our video series on GDPR, the topic that's on every marketer's mind these days. Today, the Iterable team is going to share their expertise on what GDPR means for your business and offer a growth marketing cheat sheet that you can take right now to ensure your company's compliance prior to the GDPR applicable date on May 25th. So my name is Alyssa Jarrett. I'm the Senior Content Marketing Manager at Iterable, and I'm going to be serving as your co-panelist today. I'm joined by my colleague, Sarah Gounder from our compliance team. Welcome, Sarah. Compliance manager, she brings a JD as well as a marketing background to Iterable. Prior to attending law school in the Bay Area, she spent 5 years as a marketer for CBS Radio, ending her tenure as director. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's get started. So in case you've been living under a rock these past 6 months, obviously GDPR is drastically changing how we process personal data, but I wanted to take a step back before we jump into this topic and remind everyone whether GDPR applies to your business specifically. So you can say yes if A, your organization operates inside of the EU, or B, you control or process data of individuals in the EU, even if your organization doesn't operate there. So this covers the vast majority of organizations, especially in the enterprise, which is the audience of most Iterable customers here. So I wanted to talk about this processing of personal data with you, Sarah. There's a few key areas I know that are on everyone's minds, and I just wanted to talk about, this concept of legitimate interest. It seems to be something that we're all very aware of, but want to make sure we're doing right by our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me take it a step back just to give everyone out there sort of a point of reference what a legitimate interest is. So under Article 6 of the GDPR, there are two legal bases that most apply to growth marketers, and that is legitimate interest and consent. So a legitimate interest are conditioned upon the extent that the processing of personal data is necessary for the purpose of the organization's interest. So what does that mean exactly, right? So let's put this into an example, just to better understand. So when you and I make a fast food purchase online, we're required to provide our delivery address as a client of the fast food restaurant, right? Well, the fast food restaurant has an interest in fulfilling the delivery. So the use of our personal data is a legitimate interest. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you're saying that if I order food from McDonald's and McDonald's for some glorious reason has the ability to deliver to my house, by the way, you should completely get on that right now, McDonald's. They can only use my data for that particular transaction. They can't then mail me a bunch of coupons or use my personal data for other marketing communications.
That's absolutely correct, Alyssa. So in that case, McDonald's wouldn't be able to use your address for anything outside the delivery, like, promotional coupons or anything like that. And I would say all in all, when it comes to legitimate interest, it's really just a balance of the organization's interest and the individual's fundamental rights. So what I can tell growth marketers out there is you'll want to work with your legal and compliance teams to determine if legitimate interest does apply to you.
And I think it's going to apply to the vast majority of marketers because I just think about our own daily work when it comes to web tracking and personalizing our messages. Customer data has a lot of power in making sure that the content they receive is more effective. And so what does this mean for our work going forward?
So one other thing I want to highlight really quickly is you also, if you don't qualify under a legitimate interest, you'll need consent, and you'll need explicit consent that's freely given, informed, and unambiguous. So gone are the days where we provide consent with standard terms and conditions or include it in, say, a content download, right? You'll also want to explain to the individual what you're doing with the data and that they have the right to withdraw as well. So really important to understand, you want to make it as easy to withdraw as it is easy to give consent. So going back to your question, though, two growth strategies that marketers will want to gear their attention to are web tracking analytics and message personalization.
Yeah, I imagine that when you have to require consent, this is going to affect how we can first acquire that data and then use it to personalize messages on an individual basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you're talking about web tracking and analytics, this is a really hot topic for growth marketers right now because online identifiers such as an IP address or, say a cookie are considered personal data. So, what should growth marketers do? Well, what they'll need to do is they'll need to reevaluate their web tracking and analytics strategy, and notifications of personal data processing can no longer be buried in terms of service or privacy policy. So, the days of a notification that says by using this site you accept cookies are long gone as well. So, marketers should just focus on not whether they will gain consent, but how they will gain consent instead.
That's an important distinction there. And we're actually going to jump into 4 core GDPR initiatives that marketers can enact now if they aren't already doing so. And I'm sure you guys are already experts and are on your way to 100% compliance here. But today we're actually going to be talking about 4 most important ones when it comes to marketing: subscription centers, smart lists, double opt-ins, and data retention. We actually have 7 key initiatives in a customizable worksheet, which we'll be providing to you so you can enter your own organization's information and make sure every one of your key stakeholders is on the same page. But we're going to talk about these 4 key ones today. So let's start off with the subscription center. Oftentimes, this is one of the first and often easiest one to enact since it's directly correlated to the success of your marketing messaging. But I just wanted to open it up to you, Sarah, on maybe some specific action items our audience can take away today to make sure that their subscription centers are compliant.
Yeah, sure. So this is actually something that our internal marketing team is building out right now. So I'm very, very familiar with this. You'll want to first create a landing page for subscription options. And then from there on, you can create operational smart campaigns to manage those subscriptions. Additionally, you'll also want to modify each landing page to include clear unsubscribe features. And lastly, you'll also want to create a process to track unsubscribe requests and completions.
And that really jumps into our second initiative, which is smart lists. So you talked about opt-outs as being filtered into a smart list. And when we talk about smart lists in Iterable, we differentiate them as dynamic lists as opposed to static lists, which don't change. Dynamic lists are updated automatically based on user behavior. So what kind of smart or dynamic list, Sarah, can we make sure that we have in place so that way we're following the GDPR regulation?
So there are some key categories you can use here. One is an all-user category, which means everyone in your database. The second one is unsubscribed users, which are users that can still be sent transactional messages. And then also you can create a list for your blacklisted users who will not receive any messages at all. And then finally, another key category would be bounced users, which would be any undeliverable email addresses that come your way.
And one of the things that is nice to report on is that Iterable automatically removes unsubscribed users from all of your campaigns, so you don't have to worry about this. It's already running on the back end dynamically as your own smart list. So let's jump right into the third initiative here, which is a bit more controversial, the double opt-in. And I say controversial because a lot of marketers are split either way. They understand that it could be valuable from a marketing standpoint, but it also adds extra work to their campaign management. And if I'm not incorrect here, Sarah, it's not required by the GDPR. Isn't that right?
You are absolutely correct, Alyssa. It isn't required by the GDPR, but what I would say to growth marketers out there is double opt-ins are a marketing best practice. And I say that because it not only ensures valid consent, it also provides value to customers and prospects, and ultimately more quality to your growth marketing strategy. And the way it'll do that is by preventing invalid fake email addresses, mitigating hard bounces, avoiding spam traps, and just overall improving deliverability and engagement, which is exactly what marketers want.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, it may be a little bit of extra work, but it's worth it in the long run when you know that you have a very clean list and that's hygienic and well maintained over the long run. So that way, the people that you're interacting with are the ones that are going to be most engaged with your communications. And then finally, our last initiative that we wanted to talk about today was on the topic of data retention. And I think most marketers have their customers' interest in mind, and they take it to heart. But for a long time, there have been a lot of shortcuts taken in order to acquire the most names possible. And so I think what GDPR really means for us is the elimination of things like pre-checked permission forms, privacy policies that are a bit buried and difficult to locate. And then, what we call free-for-all marketing, where I get your address once and that gives me permission to blast you and add you to every list and send you all this marketing content in perpetuity. Amen. So I guess when it comes to these marketing temptations, what can you say to the growth marketers, Sarah, about how this change from GDPR is going to affect their business?
So I think what you're going to see is more of the attention driven towards the value of consent overall. And what I mean by that is when consent is explicitly given, so in an untoggled box on the information form, and easily informed where the individual understands what is going to be done with their personal data and not for sale with other transactions like, say, content downloads, you're going to be able to provide more potential for growth. And I say that because you'll give prospects and customers exactly what they want. That hard.
Yeah, so I guess in summary, don't be lazy. Don't take shortcuts. It's not worth it in the long run. And if you don't know it, make sure your boss knows it too. It's a lot of hectic time right now when it comes to this regulation, and I think it's causing a lot of people some undue stress. But when you think about it, providing value to that customer, that's really what matters. So I'm going to conclude that by saying, again, we talked about 4 of the 7 total GDPR initiatives that you should make sure that you have enacted at your business. This is our cheat sheet to make sure that you're on the right track. You can download our customizable worksheet and make sure that every one of your key stakeholders is on the same page with that asset. So make sure you check that out. And then if you have any questions about how to comply with GDPR, or if you have any concerns about Iterable's own GDPR strategy, you can reach out to us by emailing compliance@iterable.com. We'd be happy to help you with anything that's on your mind. So with that stated, Sarah, I'd like to thank you for your participation. It's been great chatting with you today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, everybody. With that, keep calm and comply.